How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 1.
Hello, America. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States of America. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Should you want to be on the program, you can always text Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777 to be able to get the live stream, the podcast, the show notes, everything you want. This is an Axios. We got to start with this. Democrats enter panic mode as the Gaza protests erupt. House and Senate Democrats' anxiety is spiking as pro-Palestinian protests on college campuses kick into overdrive. The protests are fueling a volatile political dynamic sparked by the October 7th attack and the Israel-Hamas war. In the last 24 hours, protests on college campuses from New York to California have escalated in severity. At Columbia University, demonstrators who were warned to scuttle their encampment or face suspension opted for a third option. They stormed and occupied a campus building and barricaded the doors. Videos emerged on social media of students at UCLA being blocked by pro-Palestinian protesters from entering campus. Colleges in Utah, Virginia, Arizona, North Carolina, and Florida have collectively seen student protesters arrested. Also in Georgia, photos and videos of these campus protests made the rounds among horrified Democratic lawmakers. Annie Custer, Democrat of New Hampshire, chair of the center-left New Democratic Coalition, acknowledged Democrats have been kind of holding back on weight into the protest. Republican ads are starting, and Donald Trump has come out forcefully on this issue, and Joe Biden is nowhere to be seen except in pre-printed statements. This does not help the Democrats. So, they've got a couple of bits of spin. I played you this yesterday, but it's worth playing again. This is Joy Reid trying to spin this on MSNBC.
The message is clear. The government and university presidents want you to know that the right to protest is a farce. You can be tear gassed, shot with rubber bullets, tackled and thrown to the ground and arrested.
We can just stop there. We don't have to play all this. I don't want you to get mentally degraded by listening to Joy Reid's voice. But the fact of the matter is she's trying to make it sound like these are peaceful people and the police are the bad guys. And that's not true. Fox News interviewed one of the protesters at Columbia University. Listen to this.
In the subway, they're always right back out in 24 hours.
24 hours in New York City. That's right. That's about correct.
Got that? They're just going to be arrested, and in 24 hours, they'll be back on the streets. Now, there's also a new bit of spin that's coming from the Democrats on this, trying to cover from it. This is Mayor Eric Adams of New York.
Can I just clarify, the 40 to 50, are they people that you know to be professional agitators? You just referred to them as children. Are they students? So just so we know, how many of the people that you arrested last night were professional agitators who had no affiliation with Columbia University, and how many of them were students who are at Columbia University?
A great question, and we are sorting through that now. It has been indicated by Columbia when they reached out that the substantial number were outside influences. When you look at the wearing all black, covering your faces completely, those methodologies, our intelligence division study this type of behavior across the globe. We just had a team that just returned from overseas looking at some of the methods that are being used with these actions. There's no coincidence that you're seeing these young people across the globe being trained with the same type of individuals, and that is our concern. It's more than just Columbia. It's more than what we saw at City College. This needs to be a clarion call for our country. These are our children, and we can't allow them to be radicalized like children are being radicalized across the globe.
Children are being radicalized across the globe by outsiders, but this is the now spin from the Democrats is that, these aren't students, these are outsiders. Let me explain to you what Columbia has done. Remember the video of the guy I played you the other day who went on a tirade before Columbia administrators in January saying all Zionists need to die, all Jews are Zionists, they are Nazis, they need to die, and you should be thankful I haven't murdered them. They allowed that kid to be on campus as a student despite saying all Jews need to die until it got public exposure from the Daily Wire. Then they threw him off campus. Only after it got public exposure did they throw off campus a guy who says all Zionists need to die because they're Nazis. That guy is now expelled from Columbia, and now he's back and led the protest to storm the building. And so Columbia's like, whoa, hey, guy, this is someone who's not part of the university. Well, he was until 48 hours ago, but this has been. It's not a coincidence. NBC of Comcast is amplifying the pro-Democrat talking points. They've become a Democratic propaganda organization. This is Tom Winter, a national security correspondent for NBC. Listen to this.
Primarily, they're concerned that there's a group of anarchist-type individuals who have no particular ideology. It's pro-Palestine today, pro-Israel tomorrow, pro another cause next week. But their main goal, police say, is to try to find a way to engage in a violent way to fight police. And that's what has police so concerned, because they're worried about the students that these individuals have co-opted. That's their belief. And they're worried that they could get hurt. And they're certainly worried about the lives of their officers. So that's really the concern. That was the reason why you had the press conference earlier today. And that's why you've seen such an escalation over the last 8 to 12 hours in police's concern about what's going on at Columbia University. So that's why you're seeing the response tonight.
You got that outsiders coming in who are pro-Israel one day, pro-Gaza the next day, pro-Hamas the next day. They just want to fight. They want to stir things up. Now, look, I don't want to downplay this. This is happening. The problem is the media is overplaying this to try to excuse the student activists. At the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill, the frat boys had a moment yesterday. It was glorious to see. The student protesters, not outsiders, but the students at the University of North Carolina, the agitators, attempted to pull down the American flag to replace it with a Palestinian flag. And members of fraternities at the University of North Carolina stood around the flagpole holding up the U.S. flag so that the protesters could not take it down. It is White Boy Summer happening on the University of North Carolina's campus. The Palestinian protesters were pelting the frat boys with water bottles and throwing things at them to try to get them away from the flag, and they refused to budge. Heroes, all of them. Donald Trump should give them all like MAGA awards. Send them all red caps. The Democrats have found their moment, and they're on the side of the protesters. Andy Ogles was on with Maria Bartiromo talking about this issue.
LAPD arrived on UCLA campus after violent protests erupted there. It is happening across the country.
Well, I think there's steps that, Congress needs to take. If you're, conducting these violent protests across the country, you shouldn't be eligible to have your student loans forgiven. Perhaps you shouldn't be eligible for student loans at all. But enough is enough. Like the speaker said, this is a virus. It's spreading, and we need to speak firmly. And quite frankly, most of these folks are white, woke liberals, and enough is enough.
Yes, Congressman. White, woke liberals. They are having a moment. This leads to the purge in Chicago. I made this point yesterday, but it can't be emphasized enough. You have a bunch of white woke liberals who believe that they have to do this to get Joe Biden to change his mind on Israel. They are fundamentally convinced they must do this to shift the narrative, this is they talk about narratives. They don't talk about truth. They don't talk about facts. They talk about narratives. They want to shift the narrative in a pro-terrorist way. They want to move Joe Biden in that direction, so they think they have to keep up the agitation. Terrorist sympathizers, all of them. And Democrats now completely freaked out by what's going on. The Democrats realize they have a problem. The Republican ad campaign is starting this week in swing districts. In fact, a lot of Democrats in swing districts haven't spoken out about this. Part of the reason is they didn't think anyone would notice, except even CNN and MSNBC are having to cover this. Now, MSNBC playing it down. MSNBC, of course, sympathetic to the terrorists. CNN is the network where in Kenosha, Wisconsin, they refer to the protest there as fiery but mostly peaceful. But it's not going to work for them. It's hard in this day and age to keep this stuff quiet. Jan Schakowsky is a Democrat from Illinois. She's warning the protesters are already planning on being at the Democratic National Convention and that Gaza is looming over it. If we leave a vacuum, you see the speaker come to Columbia because he knows it drives a political wedge, Schakowsky says, and that it risks drowning out topics about reproductive freedom, protecting Social Security and Medicare, says another House Democrat. It takes the focus off our issues. Oh, yes, it takes the focus off your issues. These are your constituents. Charlie Kirk is having a moment. The radio show host, Turning Point USA guy, he's out saying that the Jews are only experiencing what white people have experienced in the last decade in this country, which is absurd. I'm sure it plays well to some, but it's absurd talking point. And I pointed this out on social media. Several people said, that's your people, Eric. Actually, it's not my people. I think that's the garbage view. But if that's my people, Democrats, these terrorist sympathizers are your people. What's notable was, did you hear the press conference of the girl at Columbia University? Where is this? Talk about fringy. Listen to this. This is one of the protesters at Columbia University talking to reporters.
Why should the university be obligated to provide food to people who've taken over a building?
Well, first of all, we're saying that they're obligated to provide food to students who pay for a meal plan here.
But you mentioned that there was a request that food and water be brought in, unless I misunderstood.
To allow it to be brought in. I mean, well, I guess it's ultimately a question of what kind of community and obligation Columbia feels it has to its students. Do you want students to die of dehydration and starvation or get severely ill, even if they disagree with you? If the answer is no, then you should allow basic, I mean, it's crazy to say because we're on an Ivy League campus, but this is like basic humanitarian aid we're asking.
Oh, you want to protest and still get your meal plan? This is how unserious these people are. They want to be Ivy League protesters with silver spoons still in their mouths, fed by Columbia. I honestly, that started circulating on social media, and I could not believe it. I couldn't believe it. And yet this girl, one of the organizers who took over the building at Columbia, said, we want our meal plan too. We want to hold the building hostage, and we want you to give us our meal plan because we're just, do you want us to suffer? Yes. Yes, the answer is you live with the consequences of your decisions. At Northwestern, they negotiated with the terrorists. They agreed to review academic policies and set up a committee to study boycotting and divesting from Israel in order to get them to go away. Not what you do. You follow Ben Sass's path at the University of Florida, and you tell them you either leave or you get arrested and expelled. And faculty, you get fired. That's what Ben Sass did at the University of Florida, and it shut everything down at the University of Florida. Instead of humoring these little children who have decided they're going to put their big girl panties on and act like they're a grown-up but still give us our meal plan, you arrest them and you expel them. This is not hard. It's only hard because the academics are sympathetic to them and just can't let it be seen how sympathetic they are to terrorists. Hello there. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson, and the phone number is 877-973-7425. By the way, I want to point this out. The protests are not anomalous, unique to college campuses. Lloyd Austin, the Secretary of Defense, was testifying in the Senate yesterday. They disrupted him as well.
So we're grateful for our partners in Congress who help.
How can you talk about U.S. leadership when we're supporting genocide in Gaza?
Committee will come to order. I'd like to formally request those in the audience causing disruption to cease their actions immediately.
I mean, they're protesting. To think they're not going to show up at Purge 2024 in Chicago for the DNC is That's crazy. It's going to happen. Scott, you're going to be the first caller today. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey, doing good, Eric. How you doing?
Great.
I got a question for you. Yesterday morning, I'd heard that somehow the United States had sanctioned or had found Israel, the IDF, I guess 4 counts of humanitarian violations or something like that.
Yeah, human rights violations, yes.
Human rights violations. I wanted to know what your take was. Do you think this is somebody behind Biden or underneath Biden that's trying to force it even more?
Okay, so my understanding, and I've read a couple of different sources from the left, from the right, and from Israel. This particular unit, there have been allegations that have plagued it a very, very long time, even before October 7th, that they sometimes engage in tactics they should not engage in. They've been restrained in the past. I honestly, though, think this is anti-Semitism at play, and it has nothing to do with this unit. The International Criminal Court is anti-Semitic. They have routinely been hostile towards Israel. I think they're just using this as cover. I will say I got to give some kudos to Democrats and Republicans in Congress, all of whom have reached out to the International Criminal Court and said, if you try to sanction Israel or this unit, there will be international repercussions against you. Because it seems very clear they're trying to dabble in what's going on in Israel, and they're playing politics as well. So good for American congressmen on the left and the right standing, well, not really the left, but the center of the Democratic Party, which is, you know what I mean, Democrats and Republicans standing up to the ICC on Israel's behalf. That matters a lot in this situation, because the International Criminal Court is being pressured by people who are pro-Hamas to do this. So whether or not this unit has engaged in actions that are probably not great doesn't really matter in my mind. What matters is that the ICC is being lobbied by people sympathetic to terrorists to take action, and we should not cave to and negotiate with the terrorists, nor let the ICC do it, even though that group is completely sympathetic to the terrorists. You know, one of the great pieces I have read about why the International Criminal Court is a bad idea was from when it was first getting started years ago. There was a big piece in Imprimis, which is from Hillsdale College. And you, my friends, can be involved with Hillsdale College and get Imprimis completely for free. I've been getting it since I was in law school. You can get it, too, by going to Eric, E-R-I-C-K, ericforhillsdale.com, ericforhillsdale.com. You get Imprimis from Hillsdale College completely for free. It's part of their educational mission. You begin a relationship with Hillsdale College. You stimulate your mind. You get access to the key thoughts of conservative leaders like Chris Rufo, Heather McDonald, Victor Davis Hanson, Larry Arnn. You can get the transcripts of great speeches given at Hillsdale College. It's such a great way to get to know Hillsdale, what it's about, and also just to get you some great conversations that you may not have from the conservative movement. And it is completely for free. All you do is go to ericforhillsdale.com, E-R-I-C-K. Give them your address. You'll start getting it in your mailbox. You will never pay a penny. It's part of Hillsdale College's educational mission to send out Imprimis. ericforhillsdale.com. Hello and welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the nation. The phone number is 877-973-7425. As always, text Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777. And you can find the live stream, the podcast, the show notes, the social media, whatever you need. All you have to do is text Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777. Let's go to the phones here. Max calling from Jacksonville, Florida. Welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm great, Eric. Love the show. Love the recipes.
Thank you.
One of my favorite expressions is the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Yeah.
And these events on these college campuses, and by the way, they're not going on all college campuses. These are all planned and choreographed and executed by the Democrat National Committee.
Mm-hmm.
This is the beginning of the election season, and it's just going to intensify as we move towards November. They want to create fear. They want to create disruption. And these are all community organizers hired by the DNC that are executing on these tactics. These are tactics. It was released recently that the DNC has hired Steven Spielberg to assist them with their campaign.
Mm-hmm.
This goes all the way back to January 6th. I contend, and I admire the Democrat Party for their execution of these political hit jobs. They're way more effective than the Republicans. January 6th was a planned, choreographed, well-executed political hit job to disgrace Donald Trump. And again, to create fear and disruption among the American public. It's as plain as day. These are all planned and choreographed tactics that they will continue to implement and execute on as we move to November. The lawfare, the same thing. These are tactics.
Max,
we as Republicans,
Max, I would say two things here. One, I think you're identifying the wrong group. It's not the DNC. There are progressive nonprofits that can do this. See, here's the thing. If the DNC did this, the DNC would have to report the money. And the FEC does audits and stuff. They got to use outside groups. They don't use inside groups. They use outside groups. So they use outside nonprofits to coordinate these sorts of things. Now, January 6th, though, I would beg to differ with you in this regard. Yes, there were absolutely leftist and Antifa people in the crowd, but there were a heck of a lot of Donald Trump supporters there as well. You don't have to take my word for it. Ask the people who were there on January 6th. Look at the records of the people who stormed into the Capitol, I realize this has become a mythology of people to excuse January 6th, but there were a lot of Trump supporters in the crowd. Yes, there were Antifa activists as well. But also a lot of people did show up for the rally that the Trump campaign organized. Now, that's not to take away from your larger point, though, that there are outside progressive nonprofits that are absolutely funding this. These students did not all show up spontaneously with REI pup tents. They did not do that. Someone bought them. And frankly, I think, now this hasn't really happened in states, you will notice, by the way, with the exception of Texas, this has not really happened in a lot of states, and even Texas. Like the University of Texas Police and the Texas Rangers got them off campus quick. But we're not seeing this happen, and I don't think it's a coincidence. We're not seeing this happen in states that are run by Republicans that have aggressive RICO statutes. Why isn't this happening? Now, I got to clarify here. I got to put some parameters on here. We're absolutely seeing protests in places like Georgia and Texas and Florida. But the protests are not like we're seeing in California and Illinois and New York and Massachusetts and even North Carolina at University of Chapel Hill, which got out of hand. But even that was not as bad as some of these other places. Why? What's the difference? The difference is not just how conservative states have handled these campus protests. The difference is also the attorneys general of those states. Letitia James is too busy prosecuting Donald Trump. She's not going to target RICO on these protesters and find out where their money's coming from. In Georgia, there's a massive Antifa protest for a police training facility. And Chris Carr, the attorney general in Georgia, has not only charged these Antifa activists with terrorism, he's pursued them under RICO and is investigating their funding sources and how it's all tied together. And he's able to use RICO to do that. So it's not a coincidence you're not seeing these outside organizations coming into even Emory and the University of Georgia, where there have been student protests. You're not seeing the outside groups come in and provide them all their pup tents and stuff as where they could be charged. You're not seeing that in Texas, where Ken Paxton, I assure you, would use RICO to string it all together and figure out where the money's coming from. They're only doing it in progressive states where the progressive attorneys general have no intellectual curiosity to find out the coordination or to find out the outside groups. It is not a coincidence that that's the pattern. They're not doing it in states where conservative attorneys general would pursue RICO against them to find out where the funding's coming from. That also shows you the level of progressive coordination. And I think we gotta keep our eye on that. Now, Michael, let me go to you. You're going to be up next. Welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing fine. How are you doing?
Good. What's up?
Well, I have two questions. One that I called in about, and one that, if you will let me ask it, I'd like to ask also. The one I called in about is, do we know what, say, percentage of students are protesting versus the population of the university they're protesting at? In other words, so they're like 200 people protesting, there's 20,000 people attending the school. And if that's the ratio, that's stupid to let that small a percentage shut down a whole university around graduation time.
Oh,
that would be my
yeah.
first question.
So it's by the way, it's not a large percentage on these campuses. So yeah, they're letting a small percentage of the campus hold them hostage.
That's ridiculous.
It is. That's the left.
Progressive state or not, the university president or faculty, administration, whatever, that's ridiculous to let such a small population close down the entire university for a protest that's ridiculous. Would I be able to ask my local politician question?
I will allow it. You're calling from Georgia.
Okay.
Folks, he's calling from Georgia, my flagship station, WSB. Ask your question.
Yes, sir. My question is a Fonnie Willis question. If she loses her primary, which I think is in May 21st, can she still be on this case, or does she have to walk away?
No, she can still be on it. This is enough of a national question. This is a perfect question, Michael. If Fonnie Willis loses, and by the way, I don't think she's going to lose because of the Trump prosecution. I think she's done a very good job making herself look like a martyr to voters in Fulton County, and North Fulton's not going to turn out enough to stop her. In fact, North Fulton's going to split their votes, I think, which is part of the reason there's so many people running against her. It's by design to protect her. She'll win re-election, but let's say she does lose. If she does lose, then she can stay on the case until she's out of office at the end of the year. She can stay on it. I don't think that helps her, though, because if she were to lose, the case isn't going to trial by the end of the year.
So if she loses, she would have to eventually step away because she wouldn't be district attorney anymore.
Correct.
So if the Trump team can drive this out long enough, there's a possibility that she would go away.
Yes, absolutely. I
Okay.
honestly, though,
All right, well,
Michael,
thank you very much.
I really
appreciate
think. Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just say while you're still on the phone, I don't think this case is going to sustain itself over time. I think it's got a level of gravity that grows, that pulls the case down into itself. And I just don't know that this case is sustainable for Fonnie Willis. She's going to try, but it's going to bankrupt Fulton County the way it's playing out. I can't see that it goes far. But it is something I think the voters of North Fulton, which is highly Republican, should turn out and take issue with Fonnie Willis on. I'm not sure they will. Now, I don't have enough time to dive into what I wanted to talk about here. Well, you know what? I'm going to give it the college try. Why not? Because I do want to say something real quick, and it was my morning piece. This is why I hope you get my morning email, and you should all subscribe to it. If you text data to 33777, you don't even, there's a paid portion of it, and if you follow that link, you get a 15% discount, but you don't have to pay to get the morning email that I send out. And this morning I did a piece, and I mean what I say on this piece. I really do believe that MSNBC wants Donald Trump assassinated. I want to read for you the profile of an MSNBC viewer. An MSNBC viewer who was a big fan of Rachel Maddow, and I think that matters. On social media, he would put up these notes. Trump is a traitor. Trump has destroyed our democracy. It's time to destroy Trump and company. Sounds like an MSNBC viewer. In fact, this particular MSNBC viewer openly shared his anti-Republican views with friends, family, and others. He attended protests. He wrote letters to his local paper expressing his discontent with economic inequality and taxes. He participated in the Occupy Wall Street movement and complained about our do-nothing Congress doing nothing while our country's going down the tubes. He told a reporter that 99% are getting pushed around by the 1%, and the 1% just don't give a damn. He wanted to bring awareness to the political and financial power he believed was controlled by the top 1% of wage earners in this country. They were in Trump's pocket, and somebody needed to do something. That MSNBC viewer's name was James Hodgkinson, who decided to take it upon himself to engage in the mass assassination of Republican members of Congress. He was an MSNBC viewer, loved Rachel Maddow's show. Floyd Lee Corkins also was an MSNBC viewer. He showed up at the Family Research Council and tried to mass assassinate the employees of the Family Research Council and then stuffed their faces with Chick-fil-A sandwiches because he saw on the Southern Poverty Law Center's website that they were a hate group dedicated to being anti-gay. And now at MSNBC, you have the hysteria of Nicole Wallace saying that Donald Trump could get her taken off the air.
I've seen that toast a bunch of times, but it landed very differently this year because depending on what happens in November, 7 months from right now, this time next year, I might not be sitting here. There might not be a White House Correspondents' Dinner or a free press. While our democracy wouldn't exactly fall apart immediately without it, the real threat looms larger. A candidate with outward disdain, not just for a free press, but for all of our freedoms and for the rule of law itself.
She's wearing funeral black while she says that, by the way. And then there's, what's his name, Kagan. He's an editor at the Hamas-supporting Washington Post who was on with Joy Reid, who had this to say.
Violating the Constitution, etc., and calling yourself dictator of a day. And he said the people like it. And I think that's a very important point that we are not focusing enough on. This isn't just about Donald Trump. He does have a very powerful, very mobilized constituency that is fundamentally seeking to overthrow the fundamental liberal system that the founders created. They oppose it. They oppose it because they think that their view of the nation, they have an ethno-religious definition of the nation. For them, the nation is a white Christian. For some of them, it's a white Protestant nation. This is an old strain in American history, after all. This didn't just pop up. It's just what's happened now is that these people who've always been around, they were part of the John Birch Society, they were part of the McCarthy movement.
This is the rhetoric at MSNBC. You have Michael Beschloss, who comes on in the mornings, a Morning Joe typically, and talks about how Donald Trump wants to be an authoritarian. Once he gets power, he's never giving up power, how dangerous it is. These are calls for someone to do a James Hodgkinson. Let's not make any mistake about it. MSNBC believes words matter. MSNBC has talked about how Donald Trump's words stirred people to violence on January 6th. When you have on people regularly telling you Donald Trump's an authoritarian who wants to end the American system. In fact, the clip with Robert Kagan from the terrorist-supporting Washington Post went on to say, and this is a quote from him, these people, Trump supporters, were in the South in the slave years, in the South during the Jim Crow years, and now for the first time, certainly in many decades, they've taken control of one of the political parties, and they have a leader who is essentially determined to destroy the system for his own purposes. MSNBC has already inspired 2 other people to attempt mass assassination of their political opponents. They want Donald Trump assassinated. And you've got the protesters turning violent on college campuses, storming into buildings, holding hostages and the like. You can't tell me MSNBC hasn't made a choice to try to inspire one of their insane viewers to take a shot at Donald Trump. We see where this is headed, or we should. If Fox News did this on a daily basis that MSNBC does, every media outlet in the country would be pointing out what they're trying to do. MSNBC is the only network in the country with a record of inspiring mass assassination attempts. You'd think they'd be more careful, except it's what they want. They can deny it, but you can hear it in the hysterics. And you know what? The hysterics have gone up as Joe Biden's polling numbers continue to fall. Now, I don't want to be hysterical with you on this one. I want to be reasonable with you, and I want to use a hypothetical example for you. You've got a small business, and you can't afford IT support. You can't afford an in-house IT guy because your business is so small. But you also need your employees to be good at their jobs and not at their computers. You can use Vision Computers. Call them at 404-COMPUTE. For just $179 a year, not a month, a year per computer, they can be your in-house IT. So you got 5-6 employees. They've each got a computer vision, can build you what they need. He can save you money on it, so you're not doing a one-size-fits-all big box store. You're buying what you actually want and need that'll last you a while. And then Vision, for just $179 per computer per year, can be your IT. So every one of your employees gets their phone number, and they can call Vision, and in 15 seconds or less, they can get the answer to their question, so they can be good at their jobs, not at their computers. That's where Vision comes in. They handle your printer support, your email support, you name it. Anywhere nationwide, they can do this. Just $179 a year, And in 15 seconds or less, your employees get the answer they need. They can also build you computers, save you money. And if you buy your computer from Vision, that tech support comes with the computer. You don't have to pay extra for it. VisionComputers.com or 404-COMPUTE. And if you call them at 404-COMPUTE, tell them I sent you, you save even more money. VisionComputers.com or 404-COMPUTE. This hour of the program brought to you by First Liberty Building and Loan, wherever you are nationwide. If you're buying a building, buying a franchise, buying out a business competitor, those are the deals they specialize in. If you need $250,000 or more for something like that, any business nationwide, First Liberty can help. FirstLibertyGA.com. You can get all their contact info there. Tell them I sent you. Spend a few minutes with them on the phone. See if they're a fit for you, if you're a fit for them. FirstLibertyGA.com. They make their own lending decisions. All right. I want to squeeze in one more phone call here. I've only got about a minute and a half, but Eric, I was going to talk about this right now, and I'm going to let you do it. Calling from Edgewater, Florida. Welcome. How are you?
Hey, Eric. How's it going today?
Great.
I agree with you and that last caller. Both of you are correct. The Democrats are very well coordinated, but I agree with you, too. There were Republicans there involved. They weren't as violent as they're being made to be out.
Right.
But my mother-in-law escaped Nazi Germany, and she's looking around, and there's a lot of similarities. And she brought up a quote that there's a lot of famous quotes out there that stick, but Joseph Goebbels, he said, blame your adversary for that which you are guilty. And it seems that if you look around, even that reporter that you just played, she said that if Donald Trump wins, she won't have a job. How do they know this? Because that's their tactic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm surprised Peter Ducey's allowed to even ask a question anymore. But if you look around, he's the only conservative reporter in that whole room. So
Right.
they are very coordinated. They know what they're doing.
To add a point, Eric, remember in the 90s, Bill Clinton tried to get Rush Limbaugh thrown off the air over the Waco, Texas stuff. And yes, it's what they do. They know it. That's such a good point. And also, and I got to let you go there because this is what's going on with the Alvin Bragg case in New York. Regardless of how you feel about Donald Trump, you all know how I feel about him. This is a scam trial with no underlying legal basis for it. All they're doing is using it to try to drag mud against Donald Trump. They don't care if they win it so long as they can slander him in court and embarrass him in court. That's what's going on here. And you might as well, when you see it, call it out because that's exactly what they're doing. We'll be back with the Mike Johnson coup.